Previously, we had a devastating UK election. Then the Président of France called the Parlement élection. The triple election is now complete. Actually, I admit I actually missed elections around Europe, including Austria and Germany, so this year really had NATO's something Upal election. But hell no way, I have time to make projects on all of them. I had to make time to do as much as I have done. Now it's your turn, U.S.A. Are you excited? Are you dreading? Will you make the right decision or the wrong one? Only you can decide. To help you decide, let's begin and waste no time because you have a lot of thinking to do and I have other things to work on. The decision of all votes begins with history. What have parties done in the past that was cruel, stupid, or treacherous? The first two terms were won by independent individual people. In fact, the most recent time an independent individual person came close to winning an election was 1992. The reason they lost was because they quit in summer and re-entered in autumn. Wasn't exactly a genius campaign tactic. But the point is, a party is not required to become president. It's been done before, and since then, many have come close. When will it happen next? Then it's one and only one term for a party called Federalists, who are now wiped out. The reason they were wiped out is because people preferred another party called the Democratic Republicans. They liked them so much that they grew and grew and grew, becoming so powerful that the only threat to them was each other. A faction of them felt betrayed by the rest, so they divided into the historic party, National Republicans, and another party also broke off called the modern-day Democrats. National Republicans also only ever had one term. Democrats then defeated them 3 terms in a row, so to adapt, National Republicans merged with others to create a mega big party called the Whigs. Don't be fooled by names. Just because parties in other countries share names doesn't mean they have much else in common. These guys were not the same as the UK Whigs, who were the ancestors of modern-day UK Liberal Democrats. As we will also see soon, UK Green and USA Green score very differently to each other. It was ping-pong between Democrats and Whigs, but both of them shared a weakness. That would destroy one and haunt the other. They both liked slavery. Some Whigs stood against it, but their party was so stubborn that the slavery haters left and found new allies. And that alliance became a party that would revolutionize the United States of America. This new ragtag team of people against slavery created the modern-day Republican Party. As soon as they won their first president, they abolished slavery and declared civil war against those still doing it. Since then, it's been ping-pong between Democrat and Republican. Democrat unofficial mascot is a donkey because they have strong will, hard work, committed to help others, and also stubborn. Their party just won't die. Republican mascot is an elephant, gentle and cute when treated peacefully, but fierce when threatened. In this day, there are several candidates I'm going to be talking about. People's Party. They're not a common presidential candidate, but it's worth talking about them because they are able to grow. Do we want to help them by supporting them now, or do we want to stop them by voting someone else? Let's decide. Democrat, Libertarian, Republican, Green, Constitution, and Claudia de la Cruz, who represents the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and a few others, and some independent candidates. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's basically dropped out, but he's still got a campaign to say, and Cornell West. I was excited to make a USA version of my UK election face-off where I go through all their history, background, then their manifestos, aka platforms for USA, and give them lots of bad points. Whoever has the least bad points is the winner. But some of these parties have so much more to say than others, so if I was to give them all a lineup of bars, it's not going to be fair on the parties who are writing more. It's also not true to say that the parties who write less are worse, because it could well be that they only have 3 big goals that are worth voting for, but the others have 30 goals that suck. Maybe less is more. What if short and sweet is exactly what we want? So for this election, where candidates have given such different shapes of their campaign, scoring them all on a board is inappropriate for this competition. I cannot compare these parties the way I compared the UK's. So I'm going to do something different. I'm going to analyse them, then speculate what I believe a president's term of them will mean for the USA, the big picture, and decide which of the big pictures I recommend the USA votes for. What has this got to do with doomsday prepping? Everything! Because we're trying to prevent more R.D.L.Qs than we cause, and make a country that lets us prepare for C.D.M.Ds more than it stops us. So let's begin. The People's Party wants to disband the CIA, disband NATO, close the USA's worldwide outposts, and stop supporting Ukraine and Israel. In particular, they want Israel and Palestine to have a ceasefire. What will happen if they got their way? I understand disbanding the CIA. I'm not a spy fan, and they do more conspiracies than saving the world. The CIA is not there to help the government protect civilians. They are there to help the government get away with corrupt things and call it classified. I also understand wanting to stop arming Israel. Atheism is the way forward. Mythology belongs in stories, not countries. But if you disband NATO, the chance is very likely that Russia will invade Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia within 4 years. For context, all 3 of those countries' combined military size is roughly 6% of Russia's. This matters because Latvia and Estonia beat Russia in LGBT+ rights and gun rights, and Latvia beats Russia in lots more. Is the world stepping closer to tyranny really what you want to watch happen? If NATO disbands, the Second World will rejoice and there will be immediate consequences. USA's outposts provide it with, for the most part, access to the whole planet within a question of days, not months. If tension is growing in a region, they can send extra thousands of soldiers there ahead of time to prepare for the worst. It gives the USA a negotiation power with some truly vile countries, discouraging them from going much further. Without them, the USA is cut away from those regions. Their ability to respond to international disasters is cut into pieces, and those countries will be open for horrific business. Is that really what you want? About supporting Ukraine. It's been debated for over 2.5 years now, and this is the question no one has been able to get past. If USA spends this much money arming Ukraine, this many Russians will die. What is your better idea to kill as many or more Russians with as little or less money without risking USA lives? I am still waiting to hear an idea that's more money efficient and life safe for USA to kill Russians. Yes, Ukraine is very corrupt. If you give them money, only a fraction of it will be spent on ammo. Okay, so instead of donating money, ask them for the detailed designs of ammo and spend the money making and delivering the ammo. How are staff going to sneak off and waste that? Now imagine when the time comes that USA needs to kill that many Russians themselves. It will cost a lot more money because they will have to pay for everything instead of only what Ukraine is missing, and it will cost lots more of their own lives instead of helping Ukraine, which is only costing Ukrainian lives. Now do you see why people want to help Ukraine? Because it's not about helping them, we don't like them, it's about helping them help you. People's Party thinks that trying to help Ukraine kill Russians is really conservatives, whatever they mean by that word. International people are not sure because there's no USA party I remember of with that name, but it is the name of parties elsewhere, trying to control Ukraine. Because they think if they beat Russia and stay a democracy, then USA can control that democracy, adding to the list of foreign nations that the USA controls. Question for you. On the spectrum of countries and their quality, USA is nearly at the top. Do you really want all these worse countries to have even more wrath? If USA was doing this to Croatia or Nicaragua, then I would be saying something very different. But I want a LGBT+ supporting and gun rights supporting country to keep a boot on the bigots and terrorists of the world. So even if what People's Party was saying was true, which is not, Their motive to help Ukraine is to harm their biggest enemy. Even if it was true, so what? To finish this bit, I need to explain dollar hegemony to everyone who doesn't know it. Most international trade uses U.S.A. dollars even when U.S.A. is not involved. International economy labels the price of oil, metals, and more in dollars, but only the U.S.A. can control the value of the dollar and decide where the dollar is more valuable than other places. So if the U.S.A. wants something, they pay for it in cheap dollars. If they want to sell something or collect debt, they charge expensive dollars. This is how U.S.A. is so much richer and spends so much more and has so much more than other countries. From an international point of view, on the personal scale, there are many countries where the average person is richer than the average U.S.A. people. People's Party wants to end this. Question for you all. If U.S.A. loses control of world trade, who gets it next? I'm fine if it's a country like Iceland or Uruguay. But what if it's China or North Korea or Iran? If dollar hegemony ends, do you think it's going to be an equal share of wealth and power to everyone or to whoever deserves it more? No, it's going to go to whoever grabs it with the biggest fist. In conclusion, People's Party has what totals into a terrible military plan that will have consequences that Afghanistan and Vietnam have already warned us about. If People's Party get enough presidents, they will be awful for U.S.A. communities. They want to stop the drug war. In other words, they want bad drugs that will ruin your life and kill you to be plaguing their nation. Speaking of things that are bad for you, they call Iraq people, in other words Muslims, innocent and support Islam. This is what Islam wants. Does this sound innocent to you? Look at all the Muslim countries and put them on the country ranking line. They are consistently in the worst half. Now imagine having a government like that, or supporting that in the U.S.A. They want AI to be regulated because they're scared it will put people out of their jobs. In other words, they value employment over development. What does this mean? You've probably seen a case of someone putting employment for the sake of employment before everything else. The case I've seen is a roundabout that took 2 years to build when it should have taken a few months. Yes, development will put people out of jobs, but adaptation is the answer, not letting your feet sink into the mud while your enemies overtake you. And when development gets going good, it will open new and maybe better jobs, making up for what it demanded along the way. In conclusion, if People's Party gets big, expect a drugged, deluded, slow and primitive future. With such a saving from chopping their military into a fraction, they promise to spend the hundreds of billions per year on improving the U.S.A. at homeland. But what does throwing money at things look like, and what does it mean? They promise healthcare will be lots more available and accessible. But then fatzos go to it and raise new generations of fatzos. So the next generation needs to manage a healthcare system for them. Then the generation after that has more fatzos. So while the fatzos are being supported and allowed to thrive in future generations, who isn't winning? The fit, healthy people who get healthcare a small fraction as much and often, but still pay taxes for it. Where is the healthier tomorrow in punishing the fit so you can support the fat? It doesn't help that they want more bad drugs, so also punishing the sober to support the high. They want medical drug prices to be lower, so if it costs an amount to make, deliver and sell, but the customer provides less money to do this, how is the new money hole filled? The obvious answer is by rising tax. Do you really think they're going to be able to make a trip to the pharmacy cheaper with no one having to pay more for it? The question is, who is paying more? And the answer will be people who don't deserve to lose their money because of someone else's bad choices. To be clear, I do think healthcare has its place, especially for injuries, dentists, and obstetrics. But healthcare's place is not everywhere helping people who choose the options that make society less healthy. Ironically, if you make healthcare too big, then your country is actually going to become less healthy until you have this cycle. Last point for each party will be about education, because it's something that horrifically affects me a lot, and it's important to me that it's stopped. What will People's Party do with education if they get the chance? Forgive all student debt? So how are the people who lent the money going to get it back? The guess is easy. Unless you're naive or gullible, you can work out the answer is by rising taxes. Granted, chopping down the military is going to drop them lots, but that doesn't mean unnecessary rises are a good thing, especially in the name of something so cruel and stupid. I will never go to university. You couldn't pay or force me to. I would rather die. I choose to study for real and fund that with a small job. I work my back off in both. So why should I have to pay money that I earned well for the sake of someone who didn't learn their lesson from school and kept walking into the same traps? Why would you want to lose your own money because of a stranger who chose on their free will to have more education? They are the ones who should pay the price, not you. The grand conclusion. A president representing the People's Party will mean bad for military, bad for communities, trash health, and education putting a bigger burden on society. The others are going to have to be pretty awful for this one to be the best, so let's move on to a pretty awful one. Democrats. They can be described in 4 chapters. Chapter 1. Unpredictable mind changes. They liked gun rights. Then they hated them. They liked slavery. Then they hated it. Both of these are historically some of the most important parts of the U.S.A. Democrats will tell you they are against slavery, but the truth is, they are the only candidates in this election with a long history of actively doing it. They only swapped sides when Republicans showed up and didn't let them keep getting away with it. Democrats changed their mind once, and as soon as the other parties can't keep them in check, Democrats will change their mind back the minute they can get away with it. They will tell you they are against gun rights, but really this has only been true since relatively very recently, and for many terms of president, they were supporting gun rights until they betrayed their people. Which must make you wonder, what long-term fundamental value are they suddenly going to betray next, no matter how passionate they care now? Do you want them to have the chance? Chapter 2. Corruption, Conspiracy, and Contradiction. A quote from their platform, aka manifesto. We will curb the influence of money in politics and protect the integrity of elections from all enemies. No, they won't. Does any Democrat care to explain why by hundreds of millions of dollars they spend more on election campaign than any other party except for one, and even then, half the time they spend more than them? To show for it, they're winning half the elections. Do you really think they're going to spend their hundreds of millions on all candidates to make the election as fair as possible? When have they done that before? They're not doing it now. Another Democrat quote. We will never legitimize or amplify anti-Islam. We will protect LGBT+. They don't go together, because one wants to kill the other and that one breaks the other's biggest rule. They talk so much about helping LGBT+, and we'll talk more about that soon, but they are one Islam favor away from betraying us all. Don't build them up to betray us. The moon landing is possibly the most infamous conspiracy of all time. It took more than 400,000 people to keep it secret for a long time, and even these days, 3/4 of the U.S.A. still believe humans have walked on the moon. What I think is very sad about U.S.A. is the achievement they hold most proud isn't even a real one. U.S.A. history is filled with achievement. Independence from UK, the rise of Hollywood, rise of civil rights, rediscovery of reflexology, and yet all of them are buried under lies. And more importantly, if they are capable of conspiracy on such size, what else will they use it for? Nothing good. Every time you think the USA cares about the people more than anything, remind yourselves of the times when they have enjoyed a visit to a monarch, or invited a monarch into the White House, or said they admired a monarch. If one thing in the universe is corrupt, it's a monarch. Do you know who Julian Assange is? He's someone who the Republicans had imprisoned and the Democrats continued keeping in prison. He was sent to a prison in London at U.S.A.'s request. His crime was reporting war crimes as a journalist. He also found reason to believe that Democrats attempted to rig 2016's election. Some parties, such as People's Party, want him released, but Democrats are not one of them. What Democrats and Republicans want is for journalism to become a crime, or at least supervised by government. More about Democrat ideas of justice. They say, justice is a process, not an end. Justice is a process, not an end. I say, no, justice is an end, not a process. Of course they're going to say that. They're the government. They want you to trust and love their systems because their systems keep them in control. They're not going to say, you should probably rethink your choice of loyalty. And now I ask you, what do you think? Is justice a process or an end? Think about examples in your experience or in history or even fiction and come to your own answer. My answer is justice is an end. Chapter 3. Inappropriate Solutions, Solving the Wrong Problem. The U.S.A. has a big problem with thugs and lunatics shooting people, but Democrats want us to ignore the cause and motive. You can either stop the ability or you can stop the motive. If you stop the ability, what would that be if it goes too far? Are you going to cut people's hands off so they can't stab anyone? It's much smarter to stop their motive. What would that look like if it goes far enough? Everyone has no reason to hate society. Government is actually helpful. Children are trained and treated correctly. Opportunities are thriving. What do you want out of these two? Democrats want to stop ability and are very happy to leave very abused, betrayed people to go madder and madder with nothing they can do to improve their life because they were a victim of school. Democrats put 14,000 staff to talk about guns' effect on mental health, but they put them in schools. Any psychologist who wants to keep their job will tell you that school is one of the worst things for mental health. School makes people depressed, insane, angry, then takes their opportunities away. If you want to stop the school shootings, don't ban the guns, ban the schools so that they don't raise people into madness in the first place. Let people actually learn and train freely. The majority of school shootings are done by people who were oppressed in the school and have nothing to do other than revenge. Stop oppressing them, and that will stop them shooting schools. Give them better things to do, and that will save lives, because there shouldn't even be schools in the first place. Imagine this. A customer goes to a shop and buys something. They use that thing to do something wrong. Then fascists show up and say, we don't like the business who were only trying to adapt to their world and make a living. We don't like the object that only did what it was forced to do without any free will of its own. Where are all the non-fascists who blamed the person who really did it with their free will on their own design? Do you mean to tell me that someone peacefully having a gun in their attic that they only touch once a year makes them on level with a burglar or arsonist? Solving gun violence needs less oppression, not more. And more oppression is exactly what Democrats want. So that's 3 chapters for Democrats, but what do they want to do with education? Beside terrorize kids into shootings that Democrats can use as propaganda for their own power. Provide a world-class education to every community. Education is a fundamental public good. Democrats are horrible and liars. Their education plan is equal to tripling the tanks they send. They just want more force in more places to get themselves more powerful. Don't give them the chance to continue that. We'll talk more about them later because I want to compare their history to Republicans, but first, the next party is Libertarians. They're an option in almost every state, and if they win, we will have the first ever gay president of the U.S.A. Chase Oliver. Yes, not Oliver Chase. Chase is his first name, and Oliver is his last name. Now you know. I think with the world we're in right now, Russian aggression, Middle East about to go into war, a gay president of the USA will be a righteous move. But gay or not, is Chase Oliver and his Libertarian side any good? Yes. This is a party that I think much better of. There is a lot to like, but I would not call myself one of them because there are some differences between us that are hard to reconcile. So let's be fair by also warning about their bad sides first. They also want to shrink the military by lots, but not as much as you maybe think. Particularly, they want to end USA's efforts to change foreign regimes. And if you remember People's Party and look back at how many countries are lower quality than USA, you know that's a bad idea. They have a "it's not my fight" attitude. That's different from mine. If I had a military the size of the USA's, I would be all over the planet for truth and justice. Do I look like a "it's not my fight" kind of gal? This is what I think will go wrong with the Libertarian plans for business. First, they want to leave it to the public to boycott something if a company misbehaves or has bad standard of association. But this only works sometimes. There needs to be a few rules that companies cannot break without government supporting a boycott. When boycotts have been tried before, often the person they're trying to get fired gets promoted, meanwhile the genuinely amazing employees get cancelled. Boycotts are especially weak against monopolies. Once something has a monopoly, it is immune to all boycott because all the people who say they boycott come crawling back too soon. So can libertarians at least have a rule of no offensive public comments and no discrimination treatment of employees or customers? And if something is a monopoly, can government please help some competition grow? Speaking of monopoly, Libertarian says 2 independent people should be able to come to deals mutually agreeable. This sounds fair, but it has a weakness. What's very common is big companies make deals with small companies, but the big one makes the whole contract, and the little one has no choice but to agree or lose to lots of competition who do use the big company's help. But the big one has faults, and the contract says that the consequences of those faults need to be solved by the small company. So lots of small companies are getting disasters that aren't their fault, and the big companies are still getting paid when the small ones have to compensate the customer. This isn't fair. So can libertarians please introduce a few contract rules to say that big ones have to solve their own consequences, and contracts need to follow a code of honor, break the code, and the contract can't protect them from consequences? But to be fair, they have got a good business rule too, and I really like what they said here. Individual rights shall not be cut because of war, epidemic, or emergency. Implying they are against lockdowns, as they and all should be. That's more like it. Libertarians are not good for families. In some ways it's the same as all the others, so it's not worth digging into it, but I should say they like tobacco and cannabis. Libertarian, what is wrong with you? And they want to axe pensions, which will be understandable in a bit, but they expect people to become charitable. You cannot assume something like that. People spend money to get their money's worth back, not pay old people. So family life in a libertarian USA involves addict parents raising addict kids and older age before someone can retire, and possibly encouraging people to have more kids than they should, as is known in countries that don't have pensions. They have more kids, so they have someone to take care of them when they're older because they're too lazy to save up. But they have a lot of good. The embarrassing justice system is actually going to possibly see some improvement. No more threatening bigger charges just to blackmail a plea deal. If you want them to take a deal, you can only threaten them up to a limit. Qualified immunity means lawyers and other court staff can get away with false verdicts and slander and misleading jury and public. Libertarians want to end this. Good. There is no excuse for a false verdict, or corrupt judgment, or for lawyers to bend to the truth or even full-on lie. Judges have a duty to be integral and lawyers have a duty to be honest. Robes and/or suits do not excuse you for breaking basic morals. Their platform doesn't shut up about shrinking the grip of government and letting people really manage their lives and their country. The biggest part of this is they want to shrink all the taxes and eventually abolish them all. This is the right thing. If someone wants to pay tax, they are welcome, but no one, not even government, has any right to steal. Realistically, transitioning into voluntary tax is going to take a long time, more than one term as president. But what we can expect from 4 years of libertarians is a massive drop in lots of taxes, and this will have big effects on the whole country for the better. Imagine a U.S.A. where every person can choose how much or how little, if any, tax they pay and where that tax goes to, as spread or focused as they wish. That's unpopular so-called services getting less money, then shrinking away, and if they improve, then when they regain people's trust, people will pay more tax to them, so the improved version can grow and replace the old awful one. Voluntary taxes would almost completely end police brutality because when police do this, they would lose lots of taxes and no longer be able to continue. With the few taxes they have left, they would fire the bad ones, change their strategy, and then get better results. This would bring in more tax from people who appreciate the new version, and then they would grow big again. The better they get, the bigger they will get. Now imagine this same logic in government, military, and roadworks. If hospitals were only paid as much as people felt the need to pay them, then that's the fit, only paying for the fit on the times when they do need to, and the fat left to pay for themselves just like everyone else. So the next generation will be lots fitter and hospitals will have to use strategy to treat as many people the best they can with the money they do get. And that will make their efficiency the best it can be. For one more thing to think on about taxes, I work in newspaper delivery and too often my bike gets a puncture and 2/3 of them or more are because of littered glass. Do you really think police are going to stop glass littering even if it damages vehicles? Well, that would need them to work and have an anti-litter budget. But what happens if they don't? I have to fix my bike on my own, and therefore I have to pay money for a new inner tube. And when I do, 1/5 of the money I spend doesn't go to bike mechanics. It's taxed. And because the police don't stop glass litter, I'm going to get punctured again and have to buy more. So their options are let the litter happen and get more tax, or stop the littering by working more and getting tax less. Forced taxes are rewarding the fake services for doing their job worse and threatening to punish them if they improve. Mandatory taxes are not common good. They are common cruel, common corrupt, common stupid, and common ineffective. And if libertarians are against that, they have every right to call themselves a better candidate. And finally, their education plan. Although not good enough because they don't want to abolish it, is at least pointing in the right direction. And thinking in the right direction but not actually having the right answer is an improvement compared to most parties. They want to give the educational choices to the parents and stop government interfering. If this had happened to me when I was 16, then every year after that would have happened very differently for me. It would also be nice if libertarians made the next step by giving the child their own choice at age 15 or 16, but baby steps. For now. Libertarians are still not as bad as the others on education. When average makes total, the libertarians can actually be expected to make a difference, more positive than negative, with a president term. Can anyone else say that? Let's see. Next is Republicans. The best way to understand them is to look at their history again and compare it to Democrats, who, if you remember, we weren't done talking about yet. This idea that Democrats are the nice, equality ones and Republicans are the bigots needs to shut down. Here are the facts for you to process as you see fit. As soon as Republicans got their first president, they stood against slavery and fought a civil war to stop it. For the most part, there is such thing as modern U.S.A. slavery, but it's not common anymore. Yes, during Civil War, some parties made a national union of parties on one side of the Civil War against slavery, and Democrats was on the National Union. But that doesn't change this difference. Republicans are guilty of 0 president terms supporting slavery, versus Democrats 6. Democrats' change of heart was 6 terms too late to avoid blame for slavery being on them, especially when it wasn't even them who ended it. If it wasn't for other parties, Democrats would still be doing slavery. Then it gets nicer for Democrats. In 1964, racial segregation in public ended. In 1965, racism was kicked out of vote counting. And in 1968, racism stopped being a factor in house prices. All 3 of these happened under a Democrat president, not Republican. And by the way, Democrats want slavery. Yes, Democrats had 16 terms before ending big legal racism, and the Republicans only had 15, but the fact that it was the Democrats who stopped it makes me think if it wasn't for them, Republicans would still be doing it. And by the way, Democrats want slavery. But that's as good as it gets for Democrats. Let's move on to equality of LGBT+. LGBT+ was made legal in U.S.A. in 2003 after way more than a century since the first advocate for it. Democrats had 21 terms before then when they were oppressing and terrorizing LGBT+ for no reason. Republicans had 20. The big difference isn't just the 1 term, it's the fact that it was the Republicans who ended the madness and chose the route of ethics, not the Democrats. Yes, it was done by the Supreme Court, not the government, but even so, it was done mostly because of the Republican influence on the Supreme Court at the time. My sources don't agree with each other, but they both back up the same point. In 2003, when LGBT+ became legal, a majority of the Supreme Court was Republican. The argument is about how much that majority was. If Republicans didn't do this, then Democrats would still be prosecuting innocent people without anything to gain. Democrats talk so much about marriage equality. They were the ones who made it universal in the country. And by the way, they want slavery. So as far as a Democrat is concerned, ban LGBT+. But if we can't do that, then we may as well let them marry. But if we can oppress them all the way, we will! Democrats pride themselves so much on ending "don't ask, don't tell," but don't want you to know that they were the ones who started it. What else do they pride themselves on that turned out to be a long lie they conspired to deceive you? I hope that history lesson got through to you, if you didn't already know this, and you can draw your own conclusion about Democrat versus Republican with facts, not propaganda. So let's continue with what they're up to now. Democrats want abortion. Republicans want it to end. Democrats say it's for gender equality. You want to talk about gender equality? You want to know what abortion does to gender equality? The worldwide #1 most common reason for abortion is because the baby's a girl. I have seen counties with a big divide between the numbers of boys and girls, and this is happening all over the world where abortion happens. This isn't healthcare. Leaving people to suffer because you don't like the gender of who they're giving birth to, instead of treat them anyway, isn't medicine. This isn't equality. And don't think mothers aren't affected by abortion too. It's not just the children. The most common method for abortion is deliberately educating people on big scale into ignorance about how to manage a pregnancy, then rejecting medicine and prevention on purpose so she gets sick and dies. Abortion is so much more diverse than painless pills. And even if the mother does survive, abortions can lead to PID, a nasty disease that inflames some of the reproductive organs and causes damage to fallopian tubes that means she can never safely get pregnant ever again, only get deadly pregnant because ectopics are lots more likely. But at least the mother has any chance of surviving. Her kid doesn't. Democrats paint abortion as a harmless, easy pill that simply turns the off switch for something microscopic. This is not the truth about abortion. Babies have been ultrasound scanned and people have seen them try to escape hopelessly. Then their limbs are ripped off by brute force. If they're lucky, their death is quick after that, but less lucky ones are taken out, thrown in a bin, left in the bin, still crying. Then don't forget, there's a chance the mother, if she is not dying already, will get PID, and then we ask again if she's going to die. And despite the name pro-choice, very often around the planet, the mother doesn't choose this. Her family or country does. This isn't equality. Despite the rumours you have heard, prehistorically, a majority of women survived giving birth very healthily. Then, in recent millenniums, it got more dangerous as average adult health went down. These days, the survival rate of birth depends almost completely on the strategy used by the mating couple or whoever is managing the pregnancy. There's no reason why the death rate can't be 1 or less times out of 1,000. But in countries with lots of abortion, the death rate is 3 in 5. I've met someone who died because of it. Don't tell me abortion is healthcare. Abortion is not anyone's savior, and it is a champion of equality for no one. Instead, what fertile women need is more knowledge about mating, other sex, especially other sex, and about pregnancy. Better physical health and fitness for themselves, in particular leg and hip flexibility, leg, ab and back strength and stamina, and cardiovascular. Better quality mating partners, especially who know the information for good pregnancy coaching and are able to show some support, and better breeding responsibility. For the most part, this means less breeding. Not a genocide against mostly our own gender by weaponizing their own bodies. It's called pro-life for a reason. Get one, live it well, don't ruin it, be nice to others. Remember Democrats betrayed their own supporters by dramatically changing their mind on one of U.S.A.'s biggest topics, gun rights? Well, let's talk more about that. Billions of people are unlucky enough not to have the ancestors who fought and died for our right to bear arms. R.I.P. to everyone who fought for U.S.A. in the war for independence. And so let me tell you what life in one of these countries is like. It's horrible. And there's nothing you can do about it. Because the people have less ability to rebel, the government can get away with more evil. And it, just like a lot of new laws the government introduces, achieved nothing. In my local region alone, there is still a shooting at least every other week. People are shot and murdered in the country I'm from almost every day. All making guns illegal did was waste police time checking the same innocent, law-abiding citizens with licenses over and over. Meanwhile, the real villains who are really going to do something wrong are off the radar, just as armed as the people with licenses, and they can get their deed done with no warning. Could this have been prevented? If yes, not by banning guns. They got them anyway. It gets worse. There are stories of gun violence that clearly show us that if the innocent people surrounding the scene had a gun, the tragedy could have been resisted or even completely prevented. But that's never what makes it into a newspaper. I remember reading of a specific murder where neighbours heard exactly what was going on, but hid in their homes because they were unarmed. Then the killer broke into a house by force and shot everyone he could see. If there's one pro-gun story, it's this one. They were illegal, but that didn't stop the villain having any, and all the innocent people would have had a chance to interfere if they had their own legal gun. But because of the law the way it was, innocent people died. But the newspapers reported the wounded people saying, no more guns. Ew, does anyone actually believe this? To this day, I'm still not convinced justice was done in the end. This is an example of what will happen if U.S.A. bans guns, especially if Democrats just use it as a way to lower the rebellion threshold so they can get power, so they can return slavery. People ask me, why do you want a gun? I reply, because you're asking that question. What I mean is, why does my own protection and advocacy and people's respect to me have to be justified just because I'm an individual who doesn't wave the national flag? Police and military have guns. Why don't you ask them? Why do you need a gun? They will give an answer that can translate to something that applies to individuals. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. I'm a doomsday prepper. I have boxes and bags of stuff because I don't want to need them but not have them. The government banning guns doesn't even ban them equally and fairly and integrally. There are still people on government payroll who have them, and I don't think having a patriotic job should give you more liberty than anyone else in the country. It gets worse. I could get a gun license if I join a shooting club, for example. Well, I'd love to, but I've not got time. And I don't think someone choosing to put studies and careers first, and therefore having less free time, should take away any more freedoms from them than anyone else in the world. If you think banning guns will make society more equal, you haven't thought hard enough, because armed police aren't interested in fighting drug dealers. They just want to feel powerful. So they will see an innocent black person in public, point a gun at them, or worse, and say they thought they were armed, but no they weren't. Sometimes the police even shoot innocent, unarmed black people without motive, and when the officer is prosecuted, the other police boycott their jobs out of protest, saying, "We should be allowed to do our jobs without fear of prosecution." The only armed and dangerous people are the police. But that doesn't matter because the police are armed and dangerous. Anti-guns people don't want safety. They want a police state. So if you think about campaigning against guns, think about this first. You're not going to campaign to protect anyone, you're just going to campaign to waste everyone's time. On to Republicans. A lot of the same problems Democrats have also go onto Republicans, who also do corruption, conspiracy, and contradiction. Remember the moon landing hoax? The Republicans continued it. Remember Julian Assange? The Republicans started it. One of the obstacles People's Party faced was Republicans making laws that banned presidential candidates who had been connected to their party for less than a year, meaning the candidates some parties wanted to go with were not options. Laws like this have been made before, but were always cancelled because they were wrong. So why are they still coming up? If you remember, in 2020, there was the infamous George Floyd manslaughter. This is a picture of the person who accidentally killed him, and this is a picture of the person who stood trial for the manslaughter. Look at them both next to each other. They're not the same person! I don't know which of these guys is Derek Chauvin, but it's not both of them. This is what the pictures tell me happened. They had a CIA agent assassinate an innocent civilian in cold blood, then put the blame on someone who fit the bill. And this is something the Democrats continued, and when they made their infamous line, "Justice is a process, not an end." Processes such as convicting someone who looks nothing like the culprit in the video, letting the CIA get away with another assassination, and wrongly imprisoning someone because they were inconvenient to the government makes me believe that justice is an end, not a process. In 2003, it seemed Republicans were on LGBT+ side, but they changed their mind once. Have they changed it again? let's see who they're more than happy to be friends with. They like the Indo-Pacific. In fact, they want to champion them, whatever that means. But of all those island nations, 5 of them, and only 5 of them, allow us to be free. All the rest want us destroyed. Does being friends with them sound like an LGBT+ supporter to you? Next evil friend, they like Judaism. Most of you probably don't know much about Judaism, so let's fill you in. Judaism wants women banned from communicating with men, banned from having a career, banned from answering the door, and forced to marry young, and bans LGBT+, and puts ignorance before science. The result is scarred and submissive girls terrified of normal everyday things such as walking past someone and basically enslaved to their father or husband. Does being friends with them sound like a gender equality and LGBT+ supporter to you? Parties need to be very careful who they associate themselves with, because if these are the people who they ally themselves with, then I don't trust them to be any better. For their history, we owed the Republicans a debt, but that debt is already paid back. The debt for ending slavery was paid in 1869. The debt for liberating LGBT+, which wasn't really owed because it was just them stopping what they themselves were doing, and stopping isn't redemption, was paid in 2005, when Republicans were presidentially elected again. But why are Republicans now asking for more, and what will they ask for next? On their better side, they want to grow the military. Their wish is to grow the military to bigger than ever before. In particular, they want weapons and other equipment updated, and above all, they want an Iron Dome. That's a fancy word meaning lots of radar and interceptors ready to block a missile attack and or enemy sky fleets, which I think really should be the biggest priority because nuclear war is getting closer and closer to a reality. If successful, that Iron Dome may save the U.S.A. from slaughter, and more importantly, allow them to kill lots of Russians, North Koreans, Iranians, and Chinese. You can't kill people we don't like if you're dead. They also have a nicer education plan. Not a nice one, a nicer than some other parties' one. They want to shrink the radius of authority so states have more control of their education, less from the federation, and for the big choices to be made by the parents, not the government. Again, when does the child get to decide? My only complaint is, they say so strongly that they trust parents. It's better to trust more specifically because some parents are better than others. So, Republicans are a mixed bag. My review wasn't very consistent because they aren't very consistent. There are worse parties, and now Republicans should be treated skeptically, critically, and with caution, but respected for some of their finest moments in the past. You see, never let it be said that I'm unfair. If I see a good point, I say it and mean it. But I prefer Libertarian. Time for Green. You maybe think that because Green won my UK election face-off that I'll like the U.S.A. Greens? Think better than that, because they only share a name. They are different parties with completely different competitors. Anything can happen. This is what did. They want old black people and their descendants to be compensated for oppression in the past. That's good. I believe very much in what I call historical corrections. If a country can't afford to compensate their victims, then they should not make victims in the first place. It gets better. They want to end military support to evil bigot nations. Great. And so far in this whole video, we haven't mentioned the whale in the pond. Puerto Rico. Background for this. Puerto Rico was conquered by U.S.A. a long time ago. Since then, it has belonged to U.S.A. but not been a part of it. So their problems have been neglected and grown while U.S.A. doesn't care as long as Puerto Rico serves its purpose to the U.S.A. agenda. Green wants to fix some of this by letting Puerto Rico have some control over their domestic business, give them a bit of power for themselves, and also release the Puerto Ricans who have been jailed for no reason other than politics. They were getting support or protested something, and the USA wouldn't allow it. Green Party wants them free to go. Of all the parties I'll be talking about this election, in my knowledge only one other has mentioned Puerto Rico. Meanwhile, two of them have been oppressing it for their own agenda for decades each. Green also want to make dramatic cuts in military bases around the planet. We've spoken before about what's wrong with that. Speaking of things we've talked about, Green also like abortion and want to end drug war. That's bad for families. Speaking of bad for families, if there are 5 things bad for families, Islam is one of them. And Greens contradict every word they say about supporting LGBT+ by saying, Islamophobia is based on lies. Muslims are our friends, brothers and sisters. Stop slandering a quarter of our neighbors on the planet. Islamophobia is not based on lies. It is based on history, geography, and law. What you think in your brain is 100% your business. Your religion or anything else you believe is 100% your own business. It's what we say and do that is not only our business. The rules we make and the way we treat each other is everyone else's business. There is a difference between belief and politics. We are welcome to criticize socialism, fascism, capitalism, and so on because we allow criticizing political things. But when Jews or Muslims or Christians start making unfair laws, abusing innocent people, and oppressing families, that's when they stop being beliefs and start being politics. And I believe that we should be allowed to criticize Judaism, Islam, and so on in the same way that we can criticize communism or right-wing. If that means hate, then so be it. But it's not bad to hate hate. Hate of hate is hate I don't hate. These are some of the reasons I hate Muslims. They want to kill me, they ruined lots of regions of my planet, they arrest people for wearing shorts or not covering their face, they limit career options because of gender, they don't put science first, they talk about peace, but really their 2 biggest factions want to destroy each other. Shall I go on? Do you want me to find examples of parents who betrayed and killed their children for no reason? Or can I focus on this video now? Green's education plan is awful. They want tax to pay for college, so you have to pay for it, but the people who go get it for free. There's no way I can recommend that you pay for someone else's university. They should pay for it. So vote someone else and tell the university fans to pay for their own education if they want one. That's it for Greens. The rest of what I know is just nitpicks and really make much of a difference on my conclusion. Next candidate. Constitution Party. They have the 2nd best logo, but they're not the 2nd best party. These guys look good for some of their bits, but they are raging transphobes. They call us perverts, mutilators, and more. And they're Christians. So much that sometimes a judge would use God as an authority in a real court, and the Federation would review that judge. Constitution Party wants to stop those reviews. They want less money to go to illegal immigrants and or to other countries. They want all immigration to stop until such a time as terrorists coming in is solved and government no longer needs to subsidize illegal immigrants. Which is fair enough. They also want to stop donating for foreign aid. They say it wins no friends. And in my experience of going to other countries to help them, only for them to tell me they don't need my help and they hate me, I agree with them. Kindness does not make people like you. They don't need your help, or at least they don't deserve it. As for military, they want wars declarable only by Congress, not by presidents, or by international unions such as UN, which is fine by me. and they want USA soldiers pulled out of all wars that USA can get deeper in. That part I'm not a fan of. They seem to care about small businesses. They say small businesses pay much more tax and make up so much more of the market. Thinking about it independently, these are only going to be true in some ways of measuring it, but the point is still there. And yet, red tape in USA is strangling small businesses, making it lots harder than it already would be just to start one, and then lots harder again to grow it. They want to cut that red tape away and let businesses thrive. Red tape wants us to think it's for integrity or safety or ethics, but really, realistically, more often than that, it's just for control. So this is a good point. They're also going to help small businesses more, as we'll get to soon. Some services will become more efficient if Constitution Party wins a president. They want hospitals themselves, not the government, to be in charge of medicine, so the people involved in the management get to do the managing as best as they can, without some sneeze-skin politician insisting they can't have what they need or should pile plenty of what they already have when other hospitals are running short of it. And if the government was going to do a good job on it, cut out the middleman and make the whole thing simpler and more efficient. They want two big leaps in a good direction for education. For first, they want mandatory attendance to school to be repealed so you can skip school if you want. Good. For second, they want parents who don't send their kids to state schools to pay less tax. Good. If someone wants to send their kids to state school, they should pay for it. If you know better, you shouldn't have to pay for someone else. Why is this good for business? Because kids with more free time and parents with more money equals more customers for lots of leisure places and other businesses. You might think that because they have so much more positive than negative that I prefer them to all the others, but no. It's not only about number of good things, it's about the effect of the good things, and I'm convinced the best of other candidates is going to be more important. It's also about trust that they will do the good things, and I think if USA elects Constitution Party hoping for their promises, then they'll do lots of transphobic and Christian things before keeping any of their good promises. So I'm not suggesting anyone vote for them. The next presidential candidate is connected to Party of Socialism and Liberation, and a few others, because different parties are in different states, and some of them share a candidate by allying together. A piece of the Whigs allied with others to become Republicans, if you remember, so it's not such a crazy idea. The candidate I'm talking about is Claudia de la Cruz. She is campaigning to become the first black female president of the U.S.A., and in fact, the first female president of the U.S.A. at all. In the past, female candidates have been imprisoned for obscenity, in other words, no reason, and unfairly dismissed whether their ideas were good or not. Will Claudia de la Cruz prove that barrier has been broken? If it has, and she has the same chance as someone white or male, then what she needs is to be, if judged fairly, better than the others. Is she? I don't think so. She's originally from Dominican Republic. And don't worry, I checked. That's a good one. Relatively. The worldwide competition for good countries isn't so intense. But her Dominican Republic history is nothing we need to worry about. They legally tolerate LGBT+, they have gun rights, no monarchs, no conscription, and minimum leaving age for school is 14 years old. If anything, being from Dominican Republic is a good sign for Claudia de la Cruz. Not to be confused with Dominica. That would be awful. Just like the next point. Not only is she Christian, but she was a pastor for 8 years. The next thing wrong is, well, you heard the party's name, socialism. In fact, half of the campaign is just mentioning socialism as long as they can for. These guys hate on capitalism way too much. I mean, yeah, it's bad, I've said before. You would know if you watched all my videos. But the whole spectrum of left and right wing is a load of rubbish, and there's only so long I can read Love socialism, hate capitalism, love socialism, hate capitalism. Before I say, I understand what you're trying to tell me, can you please give me some details, hows, and alternatives? Maybe even some original ideas? When they finally, but temporarily, shut up about capitalism, this is what they say. Not lots, really. There's so many paragraphs to read, but so little for my brain to process. Are there hidden buttons that I need to press to find your ideas? Is this a treasure hunt? So when something finally is said, they don't want capitalism or the market to decide who gets evacuated from a flood zone or left behind. I'm a doomsday prepper who believes she's reasonably ready for a flood. My first impression is, if you're not being evacuated, then walk. Then evacuate yourself. You're not for. Geography lesson for you. Floods don't cover the entire U.S.A. When the flood is coming, you will have a high ground or a further inland to get to with your bug-out bag. Don't wait for help. Help yourself. I wonder what she says about zombies. I don't want capitalism or the market to decide who gets a base fortified, a team gathered, or zombies killed. Then fortify your own base, meet your own team, and kill your own zombies if you don't want to join them. People's Party aren't the only ones who put employment before development. Claudia R.D.L.Q doesn't like unmanaged AI either. To avoid repeating myself and exposing the flaws of how I shaped this script and video, AI has the chance to grow into something really important, maybe even a new type of life in enough centuries. And we don't want the distant future looking back at our time and saying, wow, what ignorant android-hating bigots our ancestors were. That's it for the hate on Claudia R.D.L.Q and her parties. I wanted to save the nice bits for last to finish on good vibes. She doesn't like the police for understandable reasons. The police don't care about catching thieves or vandals. They care about controlling you. That's why in some countries, they're more than happy to do lockdowns, but let 99% of thefts go unsolved. All but few of them not even investigated. Hopefully, Claudia R.D.L.Q as president would do a big effort to stop the police and the thugs. She also wants Julian Assange to be released. The only other party I know to have mentioned that is People's. More importantly, on this whole market and capitalism hating thing, she doesn't want that to decide who does and does not go to prison. She wants poor people to be tried the same way as rich people, which should be the way all courts are, but it takes campaigning, apparently. And I set this up before, but this is the other party I heard of advocating Puerto Rico. Specifically, she wants to remove U.S.A. Navy from there. A big start to being fair to Puerto Rico. In conclusion, there's not much to say about Claudia R.D.L.Q. I think if she becomes president, there will be many years of solving the wrong problems and lots of repeating herself, but at least we have a black woman candidate. What a milestone for diversity and inclusion. Now we're waiting for the first black woman good candidate. To be clear, she's not a candidate in many states, so her chances of winning are tiny, but if she does win the points from the states she is a candidate in, then she will have lots of campaign progress ready for the next election when she'll be available in more states. So if she's your favourite, don't be discouraged. Although Claudia R.D.L.Q was part independent, the rest of the ones I'll talk about are completely independent, connected to no party at all. Robert F. Kennedy. Yes, that's Kennedy. The one who made the front page by revealing he left a dead bear in Central Park a long time ago, filling the local people with mystery of how it got there. I just hope it wasn't him who killed the bear. Robert was originally a Democrat fan starting when he was 6 years old. His father and uncle were both Democrat politicians. They were also both assassinated. One of them was notably assassinated for suggesting to disband the CIA. And for many decades of almost his whole life, he was with them Until he was betrayed by the party, which had broken its own values so badly that he had to defect. He entered as an independent candidate, but then the Secret Service decided not to protect him the same way they were protecting the other candidates. This disadvantage forced him to quit in most states, but not all. So his chances of winning this election are impossible, even if he wins all the states he can. But if he does win lots of states, it will convince the Secret Service to treat him fairly in the next election, when he can then enter in all states. So again, don't be discouraged. Even though he's only a candidate in few states, he is campaigning in all, and I think for the circumstances he is in, the right thing to do is show what his case is to all you. He is pro-guns, and in fact, pro-lots of the Constitution. He doesn't like conspiracy or corruption, so he wants all cover-ups unwrapped. I think he should start with the assassination attempts on Donald that conveniently don't kill him, but get him lots of press and sympathy at times when he needs it. Coincidence? He is against forever wars. He only wants U.S.A. to fight in wars that can actually be finished and won. He wants healthcare to rely less on big pharmacies. I'm with him there. Germs will one day adapt around any chemical killer anyway. Chemical medicines come with risks that other medicines don't, and relying on chemical interference is a way to make future generations more medically dependent on expensive support from companies and society. And it's hard not to be with him on. He wants to clean toxins out of the sea, land, and air, and also have food in the country made without toxic ingredients. That's one way to get healthier and happier and eco-friendly. For the most part, there are such cases when cleaning up pollution can be as bad as the original pollution, but I think he'll have a plan for those ones. The only thing wrong with him, he went to Harvard's. That's a big posh university in the U.S.A. Anyone who goes there has an unfair advantage over people who were treated worse but deserved better. It's the equivalent of the more famous Oxford or Cambridge, so mark him down for that. In conclusion, Robert F. Kennedy seems like a better than most option. His plan is short but sweet, sometimes literally sweet. I recommend, even if nothing else, you at least check out his website. The last one! Cornell West. Also the vaguest and least thorough. This'll be fast. He also went to Harvard's, minus from him. He supports Palestine, thinks Russia was provoked by NATO to attack Ukraine. He talks about a few common things and says common things about them, except he doesn't say how. And that's about it. So here we have it. The list of all the ones I could look at, and what 4 years of them would probably do to U.S.A. Which one do I recommend you vote for? Nearly all sides have made good points. Absolutely all sides have made bad points. But there can only be one winner. And you've probably worked it out already, that winner is Libertarian with Chase Oliver. I highly suggest, if you vote in the U.S.A. election, you vote for Chase Oliver of Libertarian. As far as I can see, and I can see far, they are by quite some way the best candidate. I'm not a fan of them, but I'm closer to being a fan of them than I am any of the others. But it's not in my hands. It's in yours, the voters of the U.S.A. I hope this long video has gotten through to you. I hope I paced it fast enough. I hope it helped you think carefully about what's important and think for yourself. One last thing to think about. In the past, it has taken parties to break or merge for a new one to rise. But why would you want to wait for some big historical event to happen around you when you can grab the pencil of time and write your own historical events? The Federalists were wiped out because people didn't vote for them anymore. If the voters can destroy a party, they can build one, and you don't need to wait to be told. And I hope if you vote, you do the right thing. The choice is yours. I will see you in the apocalypse. And subscribe to survive.